I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Okay, so this first game was who was playing this game? This one was Ronit playing white against Elliot playing black. So let's see how it went. So it starts off as a London system, which is obviously not the most aggressive opening out there, but not totally stupid either. But here, I think that black normally would want to take on d4 or play e6, because after knight f6, I'm actually not sure how easy it will be to get this pawn back now. Because you cannot play e5 and white is ready for b4. And this, I'm not totally sure getting this pawn back is the easiest deal out there. Maybe it can be done, but maybe I don't really know. So I don't know this line so well, but we end up in this position here, which is supposed to be quite good for black because now the b2 pawn is hard to defend. And after queen b3, c4, white's sort of in a tough spot because he doesn't really want to play queen takes b6 and allow black to capture towards the center and open the a file. But in the event of queen c2, I assume we all know what black should play here. Darren?
Bishop f5.
Yes, and then after bishop f5, white cannot take the bishop, as after queen takes f5, queen takes b2, the rook gets trapped. The one thing you need to know is don't take the rook here, because then your queen gets trapped like this. White will castle and then play knight bd2 and you will lose your queen. But you have to make one more preparatory move. You play e6, as Elliot has correctly pointed out. This queen will be forced back to somewhere like h3, and then we can take this rook and black's queen will escape, and he's obviously winning. So white played queen takes b6, and then here, at this point now, though, I think black made a questionable decision. I don't like this move, bishop f5. I think black is doing really, really well here strategically, more or less, no matter what. And I think that bishop f5 is trying to get a little bit too much, and I would be more interested in trying to keep the position closed and under control. So for example, like the way, let's see how the game went. Bishop f5, knight e5, and then knight f3 seems pretty chicken. But like a move like g4 might be a bit annoying here. This bishop is going to start running out of squares, and I'm concerned that that white will get counterplay. For example, after bishop g6 and h4, it's not so easy for this bishop to find safety. I think that black could have accepted having one sort of passive piece with the bishop stuck inside the pawn chain to keep everything under control and stop any hope at counterplay. And black can develop with bishop e7, castle, b5, and eventually when he goes takes in b4 and gets himself the protected passed pawn on c4, he should be doing extremely well. So bishop f5, it feels very natural and very strange to say that you should play e6 instead to lock the bishop in, but that is my understanding of how black should play. And here though, when white played knight f3, now this is a big mistake because now black got the bishop outside the pawn chain without having to worry about a move like g4, h4 causing any kind of damage. And here I think black is much better again. So here, now rook a6, f3. Okay, so now the knight is sort of getting aggressive, which I like. And white is getting booted backwards. And did black find the best move here? Let's see, what did he play? Yes, he did find the best move. So knight b3, well spotted. And after this, but whoa, knight takes c4. I missed this move. Maybe this complicates the game. Let's think here. What should black do? Is there anything wrong with simply retreating this bishop? Where is that knight going? I think maybe it was prudent to just do this. But maybe b4. Nah, f takes e5 and black should win. For example, if ba5, some position like this one, black's pawns are obviously completely crushing. He has way too many of them. And if bishop takes e5, black can go knight b3. And he will take the rook in the corner. So I wonder actually if I thought this was the best move until I'm seeing this knight c4 from white, which perhaps is more annoying than I gave it credit for. But still, it looks like black was well in control and remained a piece ahead. So to me, this, hang on, why not after a3, f takes e5, somebody is asking. That also looks very good, actually. I think that, yeah, essentially here, I think everything wins. So that looks quite good. But yeah, so a3 was probably asking for trouble, but the problem is what else can white do? I mean, if he makes a sad retreating move like this, black should be like basically winning strategically. He'll move his king and bring this rook to a8, and whenever a3 happens, there is always knight b3, and this rook will end up stuck on the a2 square, and white's position is a complete train wreck. So in general, I think white played a pretty bad opening. Allowing black to go queen b6 and c4 in the London like this is not to be recommended. And then I think he missed his one chance at counterplay back after in this position when he could have gone for g4 and h4 to at least complicate the game to some degree. And I still don't love white's position, but I think that he has significantly more chances here than he got the way he played. I'm just curious what the computer has to say. It'll probably say I'm a moron, but let's see. I'm guessing g4 is the best move, and then yeah, okay, so g4, and I'm more or less right. Black's better, but it's still a fight. Okay, let's get rid of this one and move on to the next game. Okay, so all right. We have here, the next game is between Noah playing white against Ritvik playing black. So let's see what we get here. Okay, so it started off as a Smith-Morra gambit. Now this is a very aggressive opening, not a great one, but black does need to know what he's doing. Does anybody remember what black's best idea is here? From what we were talking about last time. Who knows what black's best move is? Anybody remember? Yes, Jeremy has it right. The best move is a6. Why is a6 the best move? So people are saying b5. I don't think that's the right idea. The big point with a6 is that black wants to take the b5 square away from white, not that black wants to play b5 himself. The big point is, essentially what happened here is black played bishop g4. And this is a blunder because after bishop takes f7, he is losing an extremely important pawn. And that's very bad news for him. After king takes a knight g5 check, white has equalized material, and now black's king position is horrible. So we have to think to ourselves, how is black going to prepare for the move bishop g4? And knight f6 would come to mind as a natural choice to defend the g4 square, so that if white were to castle after bishop g4, we no longer have to worry about bishop f7, as the knight is now, the bishop will be defended on g4. Sho, you have a hand up? You want to say something? You can unmute.
No.
Okay. Yeah, so the problem with knight f6 is that it runs into this move e5, which is quite annoying to deal with, and that after d takes e5, queen takes d8 check, knight takes d8, this move knight b5 is quite problematic for black. Because knight c7 is not a small threat, and it's very hard to deal with because knight e6 doesn't help, and because you can take it, and if king d7, you even get mated in like 10 moves without queens on the board, which is kind of funny. I think black is more or less okay after rook b8 here, but I wouldn't trust this position. By playing a6, black's point is that after castles, now he can play knight f6 next, when if white were to play e5 here and go for this same line, Because white does not have access to the b5 square, I don't really see how he can hope for any compensation for the pawn. Black will slowly but surely complete development, probably with g6, bishop g7, and castle. For example, after knight takes e5, g6. f7 is well defended. Black is ready for bishop g7 and castle next. This bishop can always come to e6 to shut down any active tries. For example, if rook d1, threatening rook takes d8, followed by knight f7, we can go bishop e6. I think black has everything under control and looks to be a pretty healthy pawn up. So this should be quite good for him. And then after knight f6, white shouldn't play e5, but even still, after something like queen e2, once black gets bishop g4 in, I think he has a very comfortable position. In any case, let's see how the rest of this game went. So bishop g4, knight g5, and here knight f6. And now white played queen e6, and I don't like that move at all because that is the square I want to put my knight on. So I'm wondering if white can perhaps, I would rather get the queen back home, where now I can hope for knight e6 next instead, and the queen keeps everything protected. Because as this game went, after queen e6, knight d4, and king d7, I don't think black's king is in that much danger on d7, and in addition, I'm quite concerned about moves like knight c2 in the air. And after castles h6, white's pieces are getting beaten backwards, and this is not really what we want to see happen. Conversely, if white had brought the queen back to d1, the threat of knight e6 is very powerful, and it's not easy to stop. For example, if queen d7, I would even consider knight d5, when once again, knight e6 is threatened and hard to deal with. So I would, I think queen e6 was a little ill-advised. So knight d4, check, castle h6. And the knight had to go all the way back to somewhere ugly. And now I'm already worried about white's queen. It looks like he made the right decision to get her out of there. But actually, I wonder, could white have played e5 here? This looks pretty powerful. Yeah, I think this is winning. If rook h7, what should white play now? Who has move? Yes, Gigi Kiao. Rook takes d6 check is absolutely devastating, and it seems like black is losing on the spot because he has to move his king and knight b5 check, let's say. And then he will lose his queen with check, and then, yeah, he loses all of his pieces, essentially. So that's not going to work. And after e5, it seems like this is decisive. Queen g6 is sort of a position like this one here. I mean, white is much better. There's no doubt about it. But I think that he really let black off the hook. There's no universe where the black king should have been allowed to evacuate so far away. But still, white has a big advantage. So here, and now bishop e7. Now I'm wondering if white can do something violent. It feels like he should be able to. I don't love the move bishop e takes f6, because if you go e d6 and get a position like this one, where we've opened up the center, I mean, this rook will never come into the game, and the center is opening up very quickly, so that would be nice, but this still looks very powerful. And here it seems like, okay, but here I think white missed the best move. What should white play here? Who has a good move for white? Yes, Jeremy and Josh, well spotted. Queen f3, and I think that black is going to face an absolute disaster on b7. His only try is queen takes b2, but for example, after rook e1, which controls the e5 square, I don't really see how black wants to stop something like queen g3 followed by queen c7 checkmate. And this looks very much over. So I like this one. Instead, white traded the queens, and this is not nearly as clear. And in fact, already now I prefer black because this knight on h3 is very passive and the bishop on e5 is very good. Perhaps white could have been a bit more direct and played a move like rook e1 instead of f3, hoping to invade on the 7th rank. But still, after something like king c8 and bishop d6, black is, it's not glorious for black, but he's sort of alive. It's still pretty bad after rook e6, I think, but maybe you can keep fighting. Instead, though, the way this game went, it feels like black really managed to get away with one. And now, I actually don't like black's decision to exchange all the rooks. Let's see if anybody can come up with a better idea here. Show?
Bishop d4 check.
Yeah, I like this move because essentially here what's going to happen is white, there are two open files, the d file and the e file, and white has now doubled on the d file. And if you can blunt it with your bishop and then bring your rooks to the e file like so, I think that black's rooks are going to be much better than white's. So I don't really see a need to trade them all off. I also think this bishop on d4 is fantastic and much better than the knight. Still, after trading all the rooks, black seems to be doing pretty well, but I really dislike what black did next, playing b5 and c4. I think that white's queenside pawns are quite weak, and I would very much like to run my king up and take them all. Gobble, gobble, gobble. And I don't really see a great way for white to stop it. Like, he can bring his own king to the defense, but it's a bit too slow. In a position like this one here, black gets very active. And for example, now we've been hanging the h2 pawn for a while, so black can certainly take it. But if white had taken the time to save the h2 pawn, for example, say he were to play g3, king b6, and then try to bring his king to save his queenside, the queenside will fall. And this endgame looks very bad for him. I don't see how he can try to save it. I mean, he can play f4, but the problem is the bishop is going to be a very annoying piece. Eventually, what's going to happen is black is going to sacrifice the bishop for the f-pawn when it tries to become a queen, but that's going to take a very long time. It will probably take white something like 10 moves to make that happen, while it will not take black nearly as long to make a new queen. He'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and make a queen, while white is much slower. And I think that this should be very powerful for black. b5 I don't like at all. I think that both sides should be trying to get their king to the center as soon as humanly possible. And here, it seems like black has missed his chance to activate his king very nicely. And now all of a sudden this pawn becomes a weakness, and it looks like white was able to keep it under control, and now he wins a pawn. So this all came down to king activity. Like we saw previously, when black was running his king up the board immediately, he got there before white did, but now white got there first, and that means that the c-pawn is well under control, and white has good winning chances. And here, indeed, it seems like white ended up winning the game when the h-pawn went. So, yeah, this was an interesting game, a little bit of a back-and-forth struggle. White played the Smith-Morra Gambit, and then he did not get punished for it. And it seemed like he missed a couple very direct wins, but then black sort of misplayed the endgame. Definitely interesting, lots of stuff to learn. But any questions on this one, or should we move on to the next game?
Hey, Sam.
Hi, Russ. How you doing?
Good. I just want to get your opinion. Do you like the format? These kids obviously are getting 3 games in every night, Monday through Friday.
Yeah,
and, No, I'm saying just as far as, do you have any recommendations as far as like they're getting a lot of competitive games with other Scholastic players? Should they try a lot of openings, or are you happy with the quality of games? I mean, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I would like to see more mainline openings, but beyond that, it seems like everyone's playing well and learning.
Yeah, because if you want to, at any time, if you want to suggest something or try to drive the games in a certain way, if you have any feedback on how they're playing, feel free to jump in as far as a training. I mean, these games are meant to train. They're online games, right? But we want the quality of the games, and we want their repertoires to improve and their knowledge to improve. So
yeah,
that's the whole idea.
The nice thing about online games is you can play new openings and expand your horizons and take more risks, because if you lose, it doesn't matter as nearly as much as it would in like a real tournament game. So this is a good place for you to try new things, to learn to play new openings. If you have an opening that you really wanted to play, but you didn't feel like you were quite ready for it yet, you can do it here in a way that you might not want to in a real tournament, and that'll help you gain valuable experience in different kinds of positions. So I would like to see a little bit more diverse range. I mean, but like I've barely seen any open Sicilians, for example, at all. It'd be nice to see some of those. Among other things, I've had a long time love affair with the open Sicilian. But you know.
Now, Sam, nothing. What do you, when they have all these games, do you think that they should review them, you know, each game, or put them in the engine, or how do you think they should self-review on all these games?
So there's a few things you could do. If you're gonna do it in the engine, I would use this website, Decode Chess. Their engine, it's not any better than any other chess engine, but it's it explains the moves in very human terms instead of like engine evaluation.
Can you put that in the chat, Sam, so they can see it?
Yeah, I actually have a reference link, so that let me just hang on just a second. Let me just get this. So this is.
I saw you talking about this on Twitter as well.
Yeah. So this is. So this is a reference link, and then if you type in the code Sam Shankland, if you want, you don't need to pay for it. You get 2 games a day for free. And for a lot of you, that's probably enough. But if you wanted to review more than that and you get like a premium account, if you use the code Sam Shankland, you get 50% off. But yeah, if you're going to review with the engine, you should do it like this, because a lot of the times, like a computer will just tell you the best move and then it doesn't really help you that much. But this one will tell you the best move and why it's the best move, which I think is really helpful. And I wholeheartedly endorse. I've worked with these guys a little bit. I'm a big fan of what they do. So that's one thing. But you know, also review them yourself. Like, I mean, I think chess.com has a function where you can click and go back to a moment where you played a bad move and they give you a chance to try to find a better one. Things like that can be very useful. You know, playing a lot of games is helpful, but you want to make sure you're learning from your mistakes, because you know, you're going to make mistakes all throughout your chess playing life, all throughout your regular life too. We're human beings. We're a flawed species. We make mistakes. It's what we do. But what separates champions from losers is champions learn from their mistakes, and as such, eventually they start making them less often. And that's one of the things that separates champions from losers. Does that answer your question, Coach Russ?
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, so last thing I'll say is I think that this summer's unique opportunity to really accelerate their training and growth, because you know we have dedicated time with working with chess. I think it's a great opportunity, to be honest. If they take it seriously, they can have a great summer and really make significant progress. So that's what I'm encouraging everybody to do.
Okay, awesome. So I guess can we move on to the next game then?
Yep.
Okay, so let's kill this. Next game is here. So here we have a French. This is Julian against Anushka. Okay, so this one starts off with the Steinitz variation, which is probably the best way either side can play the French nowadays. But Bishop D3, is this a good move? I always thought Bishop D3 was sort of asking for trouble.
I played Bishop D3 thinking I could go 92 thinking I could go 92 and C3, but then I realized that C4 would trap it.
Right. So Bishop D3 feels a little bit misplaced. I believe the best move here is Queen D2, which largely remains flexible depending on what Black might do. You could castle on either side. Oh no, wait, no. This is against A6. I actually quite like the move Knight E2. This is quite clever because, for example, here, like let's say Black were to play Knight C6, Knight E2, a position like this one, I think White has overprotected the center pretty nicely, but Black can try to break it down. For example, after Bishop E7, C3, Black can play B5 and then B4, trying to break down White's center, and then he'll play Bishop A6. And essentially the way I see it is in a position like this one, the move A6, not only does it waste time and not help Black break down the center, but it also is actively unhelpful because it blocks the bishop from coming here, which Black would very much like to do to challenge White's pieces. So for example, in a position like this one, Black is very happy to get his bishop to the A6 square, where it's putting a lot of pressure on White's position. Once Black is already committed to A6, now and only now I like the move Knight E2, since in a position like this one, Now, this bishop is not coming to a6, and black is much slower playing b4, so I always thought knight e2 was a good move here. But okay, so bishop d3, and we get this business. And here knight takes d4. I don't know if this is normal. I think you're supposed to play b4 here, but I'm not sure. Okay, so knight takes d4, and here I think I see a good move for black. Let's see if anybody can figure out what that is. I'm gonna just blow my nose. I'll be right back. You guys find the best move. Okay, sorry about that. Anybody have an idea for black? Okay, so who's got their hand up? Okay, Max.
Knight takes d4, and after bishop takes d4, you play b5, trapping the knight.
Yeah, but that's almost what happened. But the problem is white has this lovely in-between move b4, which means that once the queen goes away somewhere like this, it looks like black even took on b4, but something like this could happen, and now the knight will no longer be trapped. Anybody else have a move? Max? Sorry, we already called him Max. Show?
I was actually thinking here. B5 doesn't work because of knight c6, so never mind.
Okay. Who's that? Okay, Julian?
I was looking at here. I'm not sure how it works, but knight takes d4, b4, and knight f3.
Yeah, this is not so stupid. Because after b4, knight f3 check, white doesn't have a very convenient way to take back. But the problem is, I think after king f2, his king is not so bad here. And he will be able to take back next move. And it's not, I think there's something stronger. Anybody else? What black did in the game was not bad, but I think he has something better. So let me put it this way. What's wrong with b5, trapping the knight? That's not rocket science. Okay, Julian came up with an interesting move. Yeah, so knight c6. So my thought was, what if black plays knight c takes e5? Desperadoing this knight that was going to be lost anyway, and then after f takes e5, he can play b5, and this knight on a4 is going to get captured now. And, well, we lost the knight on c6, which was going to be lost anyway to knight takes c6, but we took a very important central pawn. And this seems like a pretty interesting option to me. It's risky. I mean, I'm wondering what's going to happen after, for example, castle ends. This move, for example, does not look clear at all, because if king takes f7, queen h5 check, I have a feeling black is going to get brutally checkmated. For example, say g6, rook f1 check, and I don't even know, this king seems absolutely done for. But like if this we can take, and if nothing else, let's go grab the queen. But I think that I was thinking in this position, perhaps black could take on e5 and I wasn't sure how white was going to continue the attack when the rook is hanging and black is ready for knight takes d3 next. And so, for example, after something like this, black looks reasonably safe. I don't know. This is very messy, interesting stuff, but perhaps what black did in the game was best. So here, and then black sacrificed, well, quote unquote, sacrificed his bishop because he's already taken a piece. And white took on d4. When white certainly has reasonable compensation, he's going to be 2 pawns down, but black is chronically weak on the black squares. I think this move is more natural to me. Play something like this, queen e7 and say rook b1. And white is ready for bishop b4, which means black will not be able to castle. Black's light squared bishop is very bad and his dark squares are very weak. Despite black's 2 extra pawns, I actually prefer white here, but the game goes on. Instead, there was bishop takes d4, but now I really dislike b5. I think black needed to get this bishop out of there. And here I think black is probably better. The extra pawn looks pretty good, and he's going to be reasonably safe. Instead, we get this situation where black has 2 pawns up, but now his queen is in some danger, and the dark squares are very tender. And here I think black made pretty serious mistake with knight e4. Why is this a bad move? Julian.
Because black can't castle after that.
Yeah, it leaves, it will, he couldn't castle before anyway, but it leaves white with this incredibly powerful bishop on b4 against a really lousy bishop on c8. So let's see if we can find a better move for black here. Who else has them? Okay, Max. Max, is your hand up?
Yeah, I just like castling because so if they play any moves to open up the center, then your king is already more safe than it was all the way on e8.
The problem with castling is this move is going to hurt. Because I'm threatening bishop takes h7 check, and that is not messing around. And I don't really see how you're going to stop it. This bishop is going to get hit with a nasty discovery. So we'd like to castle, but I don't think we can. What should black play instead? Julian?
I was thinking of a5.
Yeah, this was the move I had in mind. So black is 2 pawns up. So I don't think he's too unhappy about sacrificing one of them to get some trades and get his king to safety. So here, I really want to play against this b4 bishop. If it comes back to just a3, then after b4, black has everything under control. The bishop is totally shut down. So I think white should take this pawn. And the thing is, what did black get for it? Well, he got a few things. Most importantly, he got this bishop off of b4 for a critical tempo, which means that now black could consider a move like knight e4. When we get a position like this one, since black is now able to castle, I think he's going to be quite safe. While if white's bishop were on b4 preventing castling, like if this bishop got back here and the black's king is stuck in the center, I'd be very worried about rook c1 and rook c7 and getting mated. As is, after castle, black got himself to safety by pushing this pawn away. But in addition to that, he's also opening the a file for his rook and the a6 square for his bishop. After bishop takes a5, I'm even curious. Black could consider sacrificing an exchange here and playing something like this even. In fact, yeah, this looks completely winning. I don't think white's going to hold this together. After castle, what should black play now? Anybody have a brilliant idea? So Julian says knight a4, but I'm concerned about rook c1 and c8 is going to hang.
It's all in the wording, right?
Let's see if we can find a better move. White's about, it's not particularly subtle what white wants to do. He wants to damage us on the open c file.
You know, the circumstances permit language that the other one didn't. I mean, I would definitely, no matter where we land, that would include language like that, so we don't look like we're, you know, being overly aggressive.
Anybody have a thought? So Gigi Chow says, sorry, I'm horrible with that name, I guess, but knight b7. But my concern is after queen takes b5 check, now your king is going to have to move. And then rook c1 will come anyway, and black is in some trouble. So I think we have a stronger move. Okay, so knight d3, as Julian says, is a thought, but I'm still concerned about queen takes b5 check because you cannot play bishop d7. This will cost you the rook after queen b8. And after something like this, the knight will become unstable and rook c1 could happen. Although even here, there is queen c5. But I think Gigi had it right. The move I wanted was castles, with the point that now if white plays rook c1 to take the knight and we go queen e4, it turns out white cannot actually take this knight because of problems on the diagonal with the rook and the king. So here black will retain his winning material advantage. So this seems very powerful. Get yourself castled and you don't have to, it turns out you don't have to worry about this knight hanging on c5. In any case, black didn't play a5. And now in a position like this, I think white should have put his king on f2, because in general, you should put his king on the opposite colored square of its bishop. And now this rook is free to come to like e1 or c1. This, I think, is very, very dangerous for black. He will not get castled. White is ready to install this bishop on d6 if needed, and then this rook will come to c7. And black will have a very, very hard time activating the rook on h8. So instead, though, king d1 doesn't feel right to me, because now the king is much more vulnerable here, and more importantly, I think it's going to be much harder to develop the h1 rook, while the king on f2 would have connected the rooks and cleared the first rank so that white could quickly abuse the c file. So after king d1, we get this business. And yeah, a position like this one highlights just how bad the king is on d1. He's walking into all sorts of annoying checks, and then queen takes g2 check is in the air. If this king were instead on f2, white would be in much better shape. But even here, I still think white's doing quite well. For example, if he were to play rook e3 so that his king can hide on e1, and then I don't see how black is going to stop some kind of invasion on the c file. So instead, rook c7, rook c8 was played, and here it seems like white's just not quite fast enough to make trouble. Well, I guess queen c1 is good here. The whole thing was black needed to get this rook into the game. Like if this rook could just come to like c6, he's completely winning. But he's essentially going to play this whole game without that rook, and that's not good news. But here I do think I see an improvement for black that's better than king d7. Let's see if anybody can find a better move. Yeah, so Julian has queen b1. I like this move quite a lot. And after king e2, we can keep on checking. White will run this way. And now there's a few ways black could play, but my instinct would be to now and only now play king d7, with the point that because white's queen no longer has access to the c1 square, white will not get to the c file in time, and black is ready with rook c8 and rook c2 next, reaching a winning position. So instead, though, here it seems like white was in time to make trouble, and now obviously he's going to win this position because this whole game black played without his rook, and by the time it got active, he was checkmated. Okay, so interesting game. Lots of key moments and lots of interesting lines to look at, but and certainly some mistakes from both sides. But yeah, still, I think it was quite nice from White to install this dark square attack and keep Black's rook from h8 from entering the game. Josh, is that a hand up? Okay. All right, so let's move on, see if we can get another game. So this is Anushka against Zishi. C3 Sicilian. Damn. Why does nobody ever play the open Sicilian? Are y'all total chickens?
I played E4. I played open.
Okay, well.
I play
you're-
open.
I play
Okay,
the open
so,
Sicilian.
okay, so not everyone's a chicken, just the ones who get their games published. So let's kill this one. And we've got a new one. So here we have C3 Sicilian. Knight C6 is a mistake. What should White play here? Yes, Julian?
D5.
Yeah, and then
I also played C3 Sicilian.
chicken. Lazy chicken. But yeah, d5 here is a good move, and Black will regret moving the knight. He's going to get the knight kicked all over the board, and White is gaining a lot of space in the center. Instead, here, White had yet another opportunity to play d5, which now I think is even stronger than it was before, because now this knight can't even come to e5 and may have to go all the way back home. And this, I think, gets very bad for Black very fast. White could even consider, I don't think he can quite get away with d6 here, but like something like this, Black has no space and a very unpleasant position. So instead, though, they transpose into what looks like a pretty normal c3 Sicilian, but I don't love bishop c5. Basically here, I think that Black needs to play pretty defensive chess. Strategically, he is doing quite well. He has some good outposts for his knights. The pawn on e5 is a little bit overextended and can be attacked with queen c7. But I don't like bishop c5 because this feels like an attacking move, and there's no way you're going to like go crush White on f2. It feels much more natural for me to put the bishop on the e7 square where it can control g5 and stop White from advancing. But I think here, for instance, I would be very tempted to immediately go after the e5 pawn. And in fact, I don't even see a way for White to defend it. This looks like it wins a pawn on the spot. Anybody see a defense for White? Two participants raise their hands. So queen e2, but then what does Black play now? Julian?
No, I was actually going to a point earlier, because if the bishop comes to c5 also, if you castle after the bishop comes to c5, there are also always like queen c2 ideas and just winning the h7 pawn.
Yeah, so like after bishop c5 castle, here like queen c2 seems to win a pawn on the spot. I would be even more concerned about this move when all of a sudden we're sorely missing a bishop on e7 that would obviously dispel this attack. But as is, this might just be checkmate. Like at the very least, it gets a piece back after something like this. We're taking that bishop on c5 and Black's king is taking a walk. So this is clearly not going to work for Black. In fact, Black must play f5 here, as this would be mate, like so. But if he plays f5 and then ef6 check comes, and then like queen takes c5 with like an extra pawn and Black's king wandering around the middle of the board, obviously this is not going to work for Black. So that's part of it. Also, after queen c7, I don't think White can save the pawn, because people were suggesting queen e2, but this comes back to what I constantly talk about in my video series and whatnot. Whenever you have a key strategic idea that you want to play, such as taking that pawn on e5 and your opponent stops you from doing it, first question to ask yourself, what happens if I do it anyway and the c1 bishop is hanging? Which I think is quite nice. I wouldn't be surprised if knight d4 is even stronger, though. Because now after something like takes and takes and here and takes, it seems like Black is taking absolutely everything. So after queen c7, I think White is losing a pawn. He definitely has some compensation after castle, because if you take it, I don't know, maybe like after a check. The thing is, I think Black's king is quite safe on d7 here, and he's ready to complete his development with like bishop d6, king e7, and then his king is, I think, quite comfortable. I don't really see any way for White to launch an attack, but perhaps White can play rook e1 and Even here, though, queen d6, black is ready to meet bishop b5 check with bishop d7, and then he will take it with the queen, and he can play bishop e7 and castle. And I think that white has to do something very, very fast, or else he will just be a pawn down, and I don't really see what that might be. After bishop b5 check, maybe you could try rook e1 here, but even if black were to like take this rook and have this position with a bishop and rook and pawn for the queen, which is technically a material balance, but I think here black has the more comfortable side because the real power of a queen is her ability to attack multiple things at once. And when black has no weaknesses whatsoever and can play like bishop e7, castle, bishop c6, and everything's protected, I don't think this queen is going to be very good. This feels unnecessary. It's probably not best. Probably it's better for black to retreat the queen, but even this would be interesting. In any case, I think queen c7 would have been a very powerful move. I don't see how white will save this pawn, and I don't believe he has enough compensation. Let me take that back. I do see how he saves the pawn. He will play bishop b5. But if white is forced to give up his bishop pair after like bishop d7 to save the pawn, he has to let your bishop come to c6. Black is very...
Wait, if you play bishop b5, couldn't they play queen a5?
Not really. Bishop b5, queen a5. There is knight c3. Take. I'm not too thrilled about this turn of events. I don't like black's queenside structure becoming compromised. I think that his bishop now is pretty on c8 is pretty bad because it can't get to c6. I wouldn't be surprised if black is still doing well here, but I think he can do. I think it's better to simply play bishop d7, renewing the threat of knight takes e5, which sort of forces white to take it. And now this bishop on c6 is an absolute monster. Black can even consider castling queenside here, and this looks very bad for white. So instead, though, bishop c5 was played, castle, and as mentioned here, I believe that bishop takes h7 check was the end of the world. Queen c2 would win a pawn here, which is good, but bishop h7 looks absolutely devastating. Unless somebody sees a defense that I'm not, I think bishop h7 would have been the end of the world. So it seems like white missed his chance here. Bishop g5, and now all of a sudden black's position looks okay because this bishop on g5 funnily is sort of grossly misplaced. It looks like it's doing good work, but it's actually doing approximately nothing and just getting in the way of white's pieces. So here, for example, white felt the need to play rook a2 in order to save this pawn, which is not a good sign. And now all of a sudden black is a clean pawn up, and once that pawn on e5 goes, I think any hope white has of launching a serious attack sort of goes out the window. So as black now can always just play g6, duck his bishop on g7, and the king looks totally safe. So I think white really missed a chance here with bishop takes h7 check. In any case here, it seems like white quickly traded into an endgame with where black has two pawns up, and I don't really have... Just assuming black won this, I'm not gonna... Wait, white won this game? Okay, seems like black blundered a tactic here and played bishop f3, losing a piece. But if black plays king g7, these two kingside pawns should win the game very routinely. Makes sense to everybody? Okay, it's an interesting game. What happened in the end? Seems like white won. Okay, so let's go over one more before we call it a day.
In most of the games, who do you think was best? Because you seem to be preferring both sides.
What do you mean preferring both sides?
For most of the games, I want to know which side you preferred for one of the games.
Yeah, the problem is like I can prefer one side, and then when they make a mistake, I don't like their position anymore. That's happening sometimes, and so when I prefer one side, it means I believe they have an advantage. If they make a mistake, I might not think they have an advantage anymore. So it will go back and forth like that, right? I mean, that's just the nature of chess. Yes, Josh.
And then at the end of the game, you prefer whoever won.
Yeah, of course. I mean, whoever won played the better game, right? I mean, but yeah. Yes, Josh, you had a question?
Yeah, so in the accelerated dragon after e4, c5, mat f6, and knight c6, I was hearing that you suggest the Moxie bind right after yeah.
Yeah, I like
But what
this
if
side.
instead of G6 they play Knight F6? What do you play after Knight F6?
Then you go knight c3.
And then you don't get the Moxie bind?
But no, but now if they play g6, you can play knight takes c6, and then after bc, e5 is very powerful.
Okay.
So the point of this move order with g6 is that if white were to play knight c3, black would not play knight f6 here, because then taking on c6 and e5 is very strong. Instead, black plays bishop g7, bishop e3, and only now knight f6, with the point that if you take this, and we get this same idea, like let's say knight g8, I guess, because white's bishop already came to e3, he might have to move it again to a square like f4. Or if he plays f4, black can play f6, and I think black sort of has a fair amount of counterplay. If you compare that to this position where we go e5 first, white doesn't have to play bishop e3, he can play bishop f4, and black will not get nearly as much counterplay here because white's not going to have to slow down to defend the e5 pawn. Okay, any other questions? All right, let's go through one more game real quick. Okay. Okay, so this is the last one. And black, in the first three moves of this game, black played knight c6 and knight b8, so that's not a good sign. So the game starts knight f3, knight c6, d4, g6, d5, knight b8. Black is losing a fair amount of time here, and white's taking a big share of the center. So this should be pretty good for white. We get some sort of Benoni structure. It seems like white's playing this quite nicely. After knight e5 here for white, I'd be pretty tempted to take this guy and go queen d2. And I'm ready for a move like rook ac1 and knight b5 next, and potentially even f4 under the right circumstances. And this feels very uncomfortable for black because, yes, Josh?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but who played this game?
Oh yeah, this is white is Ritvik and black is Rose.
Okay.
So so this would have been interesting. Instead, knight d4 is played, and now black, I think, did the right thing by advancing the king side here. I actually don't like bishop h4. Now that knight d4 is played, I would rather bring the bishop back to e3, where it's nice and safe. White is ready for f4 next to gain even more space, and black is really suffocating. Black probably should play something like c6 to try to challenge the center, but after something like this, I think white has very good play against these pawns, which are going to be hard to defend. And black's pieces are kind of passive too, and white has better structure, better coordination. It looks quite nice. After bishop h4 here, for example, knight g6 was played, trying to take control over the black squares, but I think f5 might have been a bit stronger, because the threat of f4 is pretty powerful, and if white takes it, black's structure isn't great, but his pieces now are quite active. All of his minor pieces look really good, and none of them can really be challenged where they are. So this is probably okay for black. Knight g6 I'm not as keen about because it weakens the f5 square, but maybe white can't take advantage. But here, yeah, so as soon as black gives up this white squared bishop like that, the f5 square is just a big gaping hole. So for example, bishop takes b5 here would gain a tempo on the rook. If black plays rook e7, the rook is already trapped after knight f5. But after rook f8, knight f5, this knight on f5 is so annoying and so powerful. I just have no idea what black wants to do about it. This looks really, really good for white. And indeed here, white took with the knight, but then he brought his knight back to the right square, and then this position looks strategically hopeless for black. There's too much pressure on his position. He has no counterplay, and the knight on f5 is too good. So black at least tried to exchange it off. And here, I think white probably should have taken on e5 and forced this changing of the pawn structure, because now this rook becomes an idiot, which is kind of nice. And white is ready for rook c1 next. But the way white played instead here also looks quite good. And now He's just exchanged one advantage for another. Structurally, he's no longer better, but now black is getting blown apart with tactics around his king. So queen f6 is powerful. Well, actually, black survives this. Let's see if white can do something a bit more violent here. I'm wondering. Let's make an extremely boring move. I think this seems to win a clean pawn. I don't see how black will save the d5 pawn, and that should be, and that's more than just a pawn. That's a very, very dangerous passed pawn that white's about to win. So, I think this would have brought the game to its conclusion pretty nicely. Instead, it seems like black managed to simplify down into a defensible endgame here, where now black has everything under control, and well, white ended up with an extra pawn, but with black's rook so perfectly placed on a3, I really don't think white has much chance to make much happen here. And indeed, it seems like stuff got traded, and now no progress can be made, and the game was drawn. Okay, so this was an interesting game. A few key points. I definitely think that white shouldn't have brought this bishop around back to g3, where I ended up passive. I would much rather have the bishop on e3. And at this point here, I think black could have played f5. Which looks like a better move. Just curious what the computer has to say. I try not to cheat like that, but it's good to know if I'm finding good moves or not. Computer doesn't like f5. So it claims that white's just better here. That's why this knight is coming to e6. That's why white's better. Still, I think it was worth a try. And then I think that around the spot around here, this is the spot where I started to think white was starting to lose the thread. Here, white should be winning, but actually maybe it's not as easy as I thought. But yeah, this move rook d1 seems to win a pretty comfortable pawn. Or wait, oh man, computers are so annoying. Really, this one takes and takes. Stupid computers. They're too good. Okay, anyhow, we have just a couple minutes left. I'd just like to open it up for general Q&A. Any questions you may have, I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, what y'all got? What is my favorite opening for white? I mean, with white, I play just about everything. But I really like playing white in the Sicilian. I also really like playing black in the Sicilian. I just think it's a fantastic opening with very complicated and interesting chess. I think it's a shame that not so many people play it anymore. I miss the days of like Anand and Kasparov at the top when everybody played the Sicilian. Okay, yes, show.
What do you think is your, which book would you recommend?
Small Steps to Giant Improvement.
Small Steps.
Yeah, no, that's something of a joke. I do think it's a good book, but I did write it, so that's sort of why I. Yeah, so Small Steps to Giant Improvement and Small Steps to Success are both, I think, really good. You can order them from my website if you want. But other books that I found very useful. I really like The School of Future Champions by Dvoretsky. In fact, I actually think I have them. Like this School of Future Champions, this series, Secrets of Creative Thinking, for example. This is one. There's lots of, I like Grandmaster Preparation series by Jakob Agard and stuff like that. Okay, 2 more questions. What do we got? Who else have their hands up? Okay, so Max.
And say it's fine.
I've got a question. Before you publish books, do you make sure that every position that you put in the book has accurate advice and accurate who's winning, who's losing?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I do my best. My first book, I believe, has 2 errors in it in the entire book. Ideally, there wouldn't be any. That would be ideal. But I'm only human. I make mistakes like everybody else. My editing team is helpful, and they certainly did their best to try to catch mistakes. But they make mistakes like everybody else too. I should have everything covered. I mean, because I'm a human, there may be some errors, but there, 2 errors in a book of 300 some pages is not such a big deal, right? But yeah, okay. So last question, one more. I guess that's Jeremy.
Oh yeah. So who do you think was your most inspiring player to watch?
Gary Kasparov. When I was young, and I mean, he retired in 2005, so I was 14 at the time, or maybe 13. It was early 2005, so I would have been 13 at the time. I'd only been playing chess for like 2 years, but I had seen his play, and it was just so energetic and powerful, and no early draws ever, fighting for the initiative with both colors, constantly playing dynamic chess. And I didn't appreciate it at the time, but playing dynamic chess, even when he was getting older, into his 40s, against much younger players, I mean, he definitely had the biggest impact on my chess playing life. One of my biggest regrets as a chess player is that I never got to play with him. I've played with Kramnik, Carlsen, Anand. So I've played with the next 3 world champions, and I have never lost to any of them, actually. I've made 1 win and 2 draws, but I never played with Gary, which is a shame. But, he still plays exhibition 960 stuff. Maybe I'll get a chance to play some less serious, but sort of semi-serious game with him at some point. In any case, yeah, that's good stuff. So I guess I'll see some of you again on Friday, and I'll see all of you again next Wednesday.
Good.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, you too.
Bye-bye.